Hello one and all. From one of my favourite places on the planet, the MKM Stadium car park, looking particularly drizzly and wet today. But that certainly wasn't the mood in the MKM Stadium. Hull City winning against Southampton by 3-1. And the one from Southampton came, I think, 95 minutes with City already winning the game and 3 goals to the good. It was a bizarre game in many ways because for most of it, Southampton had all the ball. They went from side to side. They had the goalkeeper at it, the defenders at it. They went into midfield. They came back. They went down the wing. They came back, but never really looked like scoring. And Hull City quite content to sit in and just try and be tight and compact and play on the counter attack. And they scored 3 fantastic goals and made Southampton look distinctly average. Now, I know it's not been a great start to the season for Southampton. Obviously, Will still trying to find his feet in England, and Southampton have had a culture of losing for quite a long time. But I just had the feeling that this was a game where City would really have the chance of getting something out of. Southampton, as I say, haven't had a great start. They were booed off against Portsmouth last weekend. And given the way that City finished the game at Swansea, you kind of I felt coming here that while anything could happen, and we know that in the Championship, this was a really winnable game. And from the moment they scored in the first half through Carl Joseph, his first goal for the club at home, coming on the back of his goal at Ashton Gate a couple of weeks ago before the international break, they looked relatively solid. There was a spell after half time where it was one of those, they were pinned back, and Southampton went from side to side. They had all the ball. City at one point had all 11 players kind of on the edge of their own 18-yard box. Southampton were that dominant. There was a time where McBurnie kind of tried to bring the ball away, he got tackled out of it by 3 or 4 Southampton players, and there was nobody beyond McBurnie. He couldn't get the ball to anybody. He just kept coming back, and I wouldn't say it felt like they were going to score because they weren't creating anything. They were just going from side to side. But then from out of nothing really, they scored the second goal just before the hour mark, and it was a brilliant counter attack. They cleared the ball. Joe Gowhart sort of carried it towards halfway. Really clever little ball. If you watch the highlights back, if you saw it live, you kind of think that's just a standard layoff. But it gave what Gowhart doing just by holding it up. It gave McBurnie and Lundstram the chance to get forward. He laid it off to Louis Coyle, and Louis played a wonderful first time ball to the back post, where McBurnie won his header, knocked it down to Lundstram, who was running in, and he volleyed into the back of the net. It was a wonderful goal. It's going to be one of the best goals they'll score all season, just because of the context of the game, how they went from defending their own 18-yard box to springing forward with a wonderful piece, some wonderful play. And as I say, McBurnie's header down from Coyle's cross was exceptional, and Lundstram's finish on the volley, and that was 2-0. That was so important. You can't underestimate it. Largely because, as I say, at the start of the half, Southampton were pushing, they were probing. It was attack after attack. City just could not get hold of the ball for any length of time, and every time they tried to get up the pitch, they lost it, and it came straight back. As I say, Southampton didn't really create anything from it. There were lots of crosses, lots of balls going around the box, but I feel like Southampton are indicative of the modern game. They're so structured, so they've got a pass, and City have done them with kind of, I wouldn't say old fashioned, but classic football, classic Championship football. Crosses from wide. The third goal was a case in point. Cross from Ryan Giles. They won the free kick. Joseph, who was brilliant today, won the free kick. Harwood Bellis fouled him. Ryan Giles took the free kick, killed it in, and McBurnie with a wonderful deft header into the bottom corner. Classic Championship goals, crosses in the box, win the contact and score a goal. For all Southampton's kind of side-to-side football, they didn't look like scoring it until they brought Adam Armstrong off the bench, and he scored in the 95th minute, which was disappointing because look, City had the clean sheet there. A 3-0 win would have been absolutely deserved, and that clean sheet psychologically, I think, for Ivor, the goalkeeper, and defensively as well. They've conceded so many goals recently. To get that first clean sheet since Coventry, I think would have been a huge kind of shot in the arm for them. But alas, I think if we'd have all offered I think if anybody would have offered us 3-1 at the start of the game, we'd have absolutely snapped the hand off. So we can't be too disappointed. But look, if you look at the stats, Southampton has 71% of the ball. City had 29%, and it's another example of you don't need to dominate the ball to win a football match, and you can have all the ball in the world, but if you don't do anything with it, it's not a lot of point. And City looked, they looked more threatening on the counter-attacks. They could have added more. Lundstram actually, they won a corner. The ball came out to Lundstram, and from just inside the D, he blazed over, which is probably it was after his goal, probably a more difficult chance actually than the goal he scored, because the goal he scored, he's having to run beyond McBurnie, and he's having to time his run and his shot in line with McBurnie's header, and then finish it beyond the goalkeeper, who's coming out and making himself big. Whereas that one was coming, it came at a nice height for, well, I say nice height, it was on the deck, but it was probably, I think he will be disappointed. But they had some really good chances, and as I say, the only kind of, in terms of the goals, just not getting away with that clean sheet. But as I say, not to take anything away from the performance, because it was an organised, gritty, clinical display from Hull City. And again, it's what you've got to say. You've got to say it's a brilliant response to what happened against Blackburn, what then happened at Bristol City, to then go to Swansea and arguably on chances they should have won the game, but they nearly lost it. They come away with a point. They've then backed it up, and we said before the game that this was the toughest test of the season. Of course it was. Southampton, they were in the Prem. Yes, they had a nightmare. They were hopeless, and let's be honest, the last couple of seasons Southampton have been in the Premier League. They've been hopeless. Their fans were, they sold out their allocation today, well over 2,000. They booed them off at half time. They booed some of the substitutions as well. You can understand their abject frustration, because that's a team and a club that have been used to losing football matches, and they've changed manager again in the hope of trying to get something. So this was always going to be the biggest test for City, but they've come through it with their best performance of the season by some distance. Yes, it wasn't the swashbuckling, dominant display we saw against Oxford, but you've got to take into account the level of opposition you're coming up against. The quality they've got in their team, the quality, they're taking off, 10-15 million pound on Azaz. They're hauling him off midway through the second half because he's been completely ineffective. They're chucking on, Adam Armstrong. They're chucking on Cameron Archer. They've got such good players in their side, in their squad. But City did a job on it. I think they did a real job on them, and you can't run out of superlatives for them. Yes, there was that start of the second half, but they were gritty. They stuck in there. I think we've seen at times Bristol City this season where they've conceded really poor goals. Last season, how many times at the start of the second half did we see them, come out really, really poorly and give away soft goals that changed the course of the game? Well, they didn't do that today, and they scored at key times. They got the first goal, which was going to be so important today. If Southampton get the first goal today, perhaps, suddenly they control the game. City have then got to maybe come out a bit and try and force it, which then leaves them open at the other end. So the fact they got the first goal was absolutely crucial. We say it's every single game in this division, the first goal is so crucial. And if you get it, you've got a real opportunity. But the fact they got the second goal fairly early in the second half when Southampton was so on top, it kind of killed the game. And obviously, once they get the third goal, which is a wonderful header from McBurnie, incidentally, no striker in the league has been involved in more goals, either assists or goals themselves, than McBurnie. I think that's 6 now combined. That's another assist and another goal I thought he was brilliant today. He led the line. He led the line really well. I've just spoken to him. He came in and did post-match media. Such a good lad to talk to. So funny. And I've got a couple of really, really funny lines from Oli coming out in the next couple of days. So stay tuned for those. But yeah, look, I think it's really, really, and I think that the crowd as well. The gaffer said to me at Swansea last week that he felt that the team owed the supporters a performance after what happened against Blackburn. Well, it was the biggest crowd of the season today, well over 22,000, and the crowd were really, really good. I mean, the conditions are horrific. It's not stopped raining since this morning. It's been torrential, awful. I mean, if you're in the lower tiers, you've got my sympathy. But at least you're going home soaked to the bone, drenched like a rat, but happy that you've seen your team win, because that's not a nice afternoon to watch football today. but I feel like the team and the manager and the staff have delivered, and he said they needed to, and I think there was a crucial moment in that second half when, as I said before, when City were under the pump, the crowd could sense they needed, rather than sitting on their hands and almost waiting for Southampton to score, the crowd could sense that their team needed a bit of help, needed a bit of a lift, a bit of encouragement, and they certainly got it. And then obviously when the second went in, it was raucous, and then the third. I mean, the third is just the way that Carl Joseph wins the foul, ball in from Giles. We're going to see that so many times. We saw it at Swansea last week. The ball in from Giles, across from McBurnie to head, and it's not an easy header either. If you look at the way he gets up and he angles it into the bottom corner, it's against a very good goalkeeper, by the way, in Bazunu. A wonderful header. So that's the game. So City 2 points off the top 6 after 6 games, and they go to Watford next Saturday, and then we've got the 2 games in a week here. Preston on the Tuesday night, and then Sheffield United with Chris Wilder back here at the MKM Stadium, that early kickoff before yet another international break. But Sheffield United, another defeat. They brought Wilder back, late defeat this afternoon at home to Charlton Athletic. So well done, Greg Docherty, the skip, getting 3 points at Bramall Lane. Right, so that's the game done with. Let's touch on a couple of important things away from that. Mo Balumi, first start of 319 days, I think it is, since November the 5th, bonfire night last year, when he obviously went off late on. I mean, that was a dismal night at Oxford, wasn't it? And if you were there at Oxford, you remember it well. But back in the start today, he made his comeback against Blackburn, few cameos off the bench. He played 60-odd minutes for the 21-0 a few weeks ago and scored a couple in the 5-1 win over Birmingham City. And he looked really bright, but there was a moment towards half-time where he bombed down the left-hand side and he cut in, and then you could see it happen. He felt the back of his leg, and he pulled up and he was limping. He tried to run it off, and then he went down a couple of moments later. He had a spell of treatment, and then he came off for Darko Djebe. The prognosis is a hamstring. It's not knee related. It is hamstring, and he's going to go for a scan to ascertain the severity of his hamstring. I think clearly it's disappointing for Mo. He's a great player. City have missed him. But I think everybody expected that when you come back and you're playing at full tilt as he was in that first half, hamstrings are the first thing that go after an ACL injury. So it is, unfortunately, we see it so often with players that have been out for this length of time with ACLs. I know some people will go, why has it not happened in the games he's played? Well, that's largely because he's coming in. He's coming into the game. He's perhaps not expending so much energy, different types of game. And obviously in that first half, there was a couple of moments where there was one where McBurnie, there was a lovely ball from Amir Hadzimatovic. He clipped it over the Southampton player from McBurnie inside his own half. McBurnie played it in behind for Mo to run onto, and he kind of, real explosion of pace. And he laid it back, and then I think it was Lundstram and Oli got in each other's way on the edge of the box. So there was a couple of times where he got forward, and he's pulled up. I think it's expected. I think it happens a lot, as I say, with players coming back, and that's something they'll have to guard against with Liam Miller, who wasn't in the squad. I know we'd expected Liam Miller to be in the squad, but I think they've just been a bit more careful with him. I wouldn't be surprised if he was involved in the under-21s game on Tuesday, with a view to him being in the squad at Vicarage Road next weekend, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Brandon Williams not involved today. We reported back in the week that he had concussion, still recovering from that, but he should be back next week, and they hope that Ajayi and Crooks will also feature. I'm just going to talk a bit louder because the rain's getting heavier again. I didn't think that was possible, but yeah, so hopefully Crooks and Ajayi back for next weekend. So yeah, terrific performance today. A different kind of performance to what we've seen already, but a really strong, resolute, determined, backs the wall at times without really being, as I say, if you think of how many saves has Pandor made? I mean, they had 4 shots on target, Southampton, I think, from 14 attempts, if memory serves. I mean, none of them were really, the 3 saves he made were fairly powder puff, and obviously they scored a really good goal with Armstrong, but he's not been tested. He's really not been tested. And I think when you you're looking for little signs of progress, aren't you? Particularly at this stage of the season. You know, they've been defensively pretty awful, I think we'd agree, culminating in what happened at Ashton Gate. But they were better at Swansea last week. Unfortunately, the only two shots that Swansea had on target were the 2 goals. But they restricted Swansea to a lot less opportunities. Well, they've restricted Southampton to a lot less today as well. Yeah, okay, somebody's going to ping it from 30 yards and go wide, fine. But in terms of actual quality chances, you know, they've really restricted Southampton today. And so I think they're making a lot of progress. I thought Egan and Hughes were exceptional. I thought Louis Coyle was very good. Giles, I can't remember who referenced Giles at the top. Giles was much better today. Obviously, we know what he's like going forward. He's very good, and he set up the 3rd goal. But there's a lot to like about this team, and they're going to get. We've said it before. I think they'll get better as the manager gets more used to Championship football, as the players get more used to each other and get fitter and stronger. You know, there was a debut in there for Amir today. I thought he was very good in that first half. Darko Djebe looked like a fish out of water when he first come on. The ball was bouncing off him, off his face, off his backside, off his arm. He couldn't get in the game, and then there was like a moment after they scored the 2nd goal where he went, and it was almost he started playing, and he looked really bright after that. And you know, you forget that he's a young player coming into a new club in a game like that in terrible conditions. So, you know, lots of positives. And as I say, I thought that McBurnie was very good. Carl Joseph again. You know, I think there were a lot of questions as to why he started the game today, given you've got Akintola and you've got Joel and Darla on the bench. Why was Joseph starting? Well, I think he answered those critics. He's a great foil for McBurnie, because McBurnie gets so much attention in the penalty area, and that was the case with the goal, that everybody went to McBurnie. Gauhart won the header, but there's so much focus on McBurnie that Joseph just goes in almost without any notice, and he obviously scored the goal, but he won the free kick for the 3rd as well. And you know, I know he's had a bit of a raw deal. He's had a lot of criticism, Carl Joseph. The fee round his neck probably doesn't help, but he had that. He arrived with that ankle problem. He's had surgery in the summer. He looks a lot fitter, a lot stronger, and you know, that's now 2 in 3 for Carl Joseph. So hopefully he can carry on. You've got McBurnie scoring. You know, Gauhart was busy today. Obviously, he wins the header for the 1st goal. He has no right to win that header for the 1st goal. He looked busy. Obviously, Lundstram played well as well and got the goal. When you go through from back to front today, I don't think you can pick out anybody and go, he had a poor game. And you know, Pandor's had a relatively quiet. He saw a lot of the ball with his feet earlier on, but he didn't have a huge amount to do in terms of saves. As I say, the 2 or 3 he did make were fairly tame. You know, regulation bits and pieces, just like mopping up stuff. Really, they'll just be knocked by the goal. I think. They'll just be disappointed that they've not come out of here with a clean sheet, because that defensive performance, the way they kept Southampton at arm's length, was very, very good. But look, as I say, it can happen. It happens. You move on and hope and try and get that clean sheet at Vicarage Road next weekend. Right, that's it from here at the MKM Stadium. I better go and try and get home and well, get dry, because it's a wet one. Plenty to come over the next few days. We'll have the podcast for you on Monday, all being well. Get in touch with us at the 1904 Club. We'd love to hear what you've got to say on today's game, and then we'll be back at the training ground next week to preview the trip to Vicarage Road, and then of course we've got the Preston and Sheffield United games back here at the MKM Stadium to close out this little period before the break. As always, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for all your comments. Keep in touch, and we'll see you again soon. Up those Tigers.